Welcome. What you are about to watch is not science fiction, and it is not folklore. It is a serious investigation into one of history's most compelling unresolved questions: the mystery of the Inca Road, 40,000 kilometers of engineering without the wheel or iron. Across the world, in universities, research institutes, and field excavations, serious scholars are wrestling with evidence that does not fit the accepted story. Evidence that has been documented, measured, and peer-reviewed, and that still has no satisfying conventional explanation. We are going to look at that evidence carefully, without prejudice in either direction. Not dismissing what is extraordinary, but not accepting it without scrutiny either. The truth, as always, is in the details. At its peak, the Inca Empire was the largest state in the pre-Columbian Americas, larger than the Roman Empire at its height, stretching from the deserts of northern Chile to the cloud forests of southern Colombia, from the Pacific coast to the edge of the Amazon basin. It administered a population of perhaps 12 million people, speaking dozens of languages, across terrain that would challenge modern infrastructure planners. And it did all of this without the wheel, without iron tools, without draft animals beyond the llama, and without a writing system as any literate civilization would recognize the term. What the Inca had instead was a road. Actually, 40,000 kilometers of road, a network that crossed the highest mountain chain outside Asia, bridged gorges hundreds of meters deep, with suspension bridges woven from grass, and maintained rest stations every 20 kilometers so that relay runners could carry rye messages and fresh fish from the Pacific coast to the imperial capital at Cusco, 600 meters above sea level, in under 2 days. When the Spanish arrived in 1532, they called it the finest road system in the world. Then they used it to conquer the empire that had built it. How one of humanity's greatest engineering achievements has been so thoroughly forgotten is a question worth sitting with. This is where our investigation begins. Stay with us, because the further we go into the evidence, the more extraordinary it becomes. The story you think you know is only the surface. Beneath it lies something far more remarkable. Let us begin. Before we examine the specific evidence, we need to step back and understand the context. This case does not exist in isolation. It sits within the broader phenomenon of lost civilizations, and to properly evaluate what we are looking at, we need to understand the broader picture that surrounds it. The ocean has a long memory. As the last ice age ended around 12,000 years ago, sea levels worldwide rose by more than 120 meters, enough to drown entire coastal civilizations that may have flourished along shorelines that no longer exist. The continental shelves that now lie submerged beneath shallow coastal seas were once habitable land. River deltas, bays, and estuaries that today lie underwater were once the most attractive real estate on Earth, rich in resources, temperate in climate, and accessible by sea. If ancient peoples built their settlements where resources were most abundant, then much of the archaeological record of early civilization may be sitting on the ocean floor, invisible to conventional excavation. This is not speculation. Marine archaeologists have already found submerged ruins at dozens of locations worldwide, off the coasts of India, Japan, Cuba, and the Mediterranean islands. In some cases, these structures are clearly artificial: stone walls, carved steps, and rectilinear platforms that could not have formed naturally. The academic debate is not whether these structures exist, but what they mean. Were they built by unknown pre-flood cultures, or were they coastal settlements of known civilizations gradually abandoned as waters rose? The answer, in many cases, remains open. What oral traditions add to this picture is equally significant. Cultures living on or near the sea throughout the tropics and subtropics carry remarkably consistent flood narratives, stories of a great inundation that drowned an earlier world. These are not borrowed from one another through colonial contact. They predate European exploration. They appear to be independent memories of a shared catastrophe, the end of the last ice age, when the world coastlines changed forever and entire ways of life were drowned. The civilizations that built on those shores, if they existed, vanished beneath the waves. This context matters because it tells us something important. What we are about to investigate is not an isolated curiosity. It is part of a pattern that researchers in multiple fields have been independently documenting for decades. And patterns in science demand explanation. With that foundation in place, let us now turn to the specific case at hand. Now we reach the heart of the matter. The core evidence surrounding the Inca Road, 40,000 kilometers of engineering without the wheel or iron, is more extensive, more verified, and more troubling for conventional explanations than most people realize. Let us walk through it systematically, fact by fact, and allow the evidence to speak for itself. We are not going to speculate here. Every point that follows is documented in peer-reviewed publications, official archaeological records, or government archives that are publicly accessible. The question is not whether these facts are real. The question is what they mean. Consider this first extraordinary detail. The Quhapac Nian, meaning Royal Road in Quechua, was the road network of the Inca Empire, extending an estimated 40,000 kilometers across 6 modern countries: Peru, Ecuador, Colombia, Bolivia, Chile, and Argentina. The network comprised 2 main north-south trunk roads, one coastal, one Andean, connected by numerous lateral branches. Roads ranged from 1 to 4 meters wide and were paved, drained, and bordered by walls or stone markers where the terrain required. This single data point, if taken in isolation, might be set aside. Anomalies happen, instruments malfunction, researchers make mistakes. But as we continue, you will see that this is not an isolated anomaly. It is part of a consistent and documented pattern. But that is only the beginning. Researchers also discovered the Inca road system was built and maintained without the wheel, iron tools, or large draft animals. All construction was executed using stone, bronze, and obsidian tools with human and llama labor. The labor itself was organized through the Mida system, a form of labor tax in which communities owed the state a quota of work time applied to road construction, maintenance, and the staffing of tampas, the rest stations placed every 20 to 30 kilometers along the route. Now, a skeptic might propose an alternative explanation for this. And that is entirely reasonable. We should always test alternative explanations before accepting extraordinary ones. The problem is that the alternative explanations, when examined carefully, create more problems than they solve. The mystery deepens when we examine suspension bridges, called Queshuachaca in Quechua, crossed the deep gorges of the Andes using cables woven from iku grass. The bridges were constructed and replaced annually by the communities responsible for each section, a tradition that continues at the Huancaire Bridge across the Apurimac Canyon, which is rebuilt each year using traditional techniques and was designated a UNESCO Intangible Cultural Heritage. This is where the conventional account begins to strain. Each individual fact might be dismissed or minimized in isolation. But the cumulative weight of the evidence is another matter entirely. Perhaps most remarkable of all, the Chasqui Relay Runner system enabled extraordinary communication speeds along the road network. Runners stationed at posts every 6 to 9 kilometers would carry messages or small packages to the next post and hand off to a fresh runner. Spanish colonial accounts, including Pedro Cieza de Leon's 1553 Chronicle, describe fresh fish from the Pacific coast arriving at the imperial capital Cusco, 600 meters above sea level and several hundred kilometers inland, within 2 days of being caught. Researchers who have examined this evidence have described it as genuinely difficult to explain within the accepted framework. These are not fringe commentators. They are credentialed academics publishing in mainstream journals, raising questions that the field has not yet satisfactorily answered. Then there is the matter of the tampas, rest stations built at regular intervals along the Inca Road, served as accommodation for official travelers, storage for state goods, and administrative centers where Quipu records were maintained. Archaeological excavation of tampas across the network has shown standardized architecture and consistent material culture across the entire empire, demonstrating centralized planning and quality control in construction. What makes this particularly significant is its independence from the previous points. This is not a case of one theory requiring another. These are separate lines of evidence converging on the same uncomfortable conclusion. Adding to the enigma is this finding. The Quijapac Nyan was jointly nominated for UNESCO World Heritage inscription by the 6 countries through which it passes: Argentina, Bolivia, Chile, Colombia, Ecuador, and Peru, and was inscribed in 2014. It was the first multi-country, multi-government World Heritage nomination of its kind. LiDAR aerial survey and satellite remote sensing continue to identify previously unrecorded road sections in remote areas of the Andes and Pacific coastal desert. Taken together, these facts form a pattern that cannot be explained by coincidence, misidentification, or methodological error. Each piece of evidence has been examined by skeptics. Each has been subjected to alternative explanations. And in each case, the alternative explanation falls short of accounting for everything that has been documented. We are left with a body of evidence that demands explanation and an accepted narrative that does not provide one. This is where serious inquiry begins. Now that we have established the evidence, we need to examine the theories that researchers have proposed to explain the Inca Road, 40,000 kilometers of engineering without the wheel or iron. This is where the debate becomes most intense, because the theories reflect not just different interpretations of the same evidence, but fundamentally different assumptions about what is possible and what the past looked like. Understanding these theories is not just an academic exercise. Each one has been championed by serious researchers with genuine credentials, and each one captures something that the others miss. The truth, if it is ever established, will likely draw on elements of several. The first major explanation proposed by researchers holds that the road network enabled military conquest, administrative control, and economic integration of the largest empire in pre-Columbian Americas. The mainstream consensus, advanced by John Rowe, Gary Urton, and most Andean archaeologists. The road facilitated rapid troop movement, state redistribution of goods, and communication between the imperial center and provincial administrators. The evidence from Tampu distribution and Chasqui speed records strongly supports this primarily administrative and military function. This interpretation has significant academic support and is backed by substantial evidence, but it is not without problems. Critics point out that it requires assumptions that go beyond what the evidence strictly supports, and that key predictions of this theory have not been confirmed by subsequent research. It remains contested, and the contest is productive. A rival school of thought argues that the roads served primarily ritual and religious purposes, connecting huacas, sacred sites, and landscape features, along sect lines radiating from Cusco across the Inca cosmos. Frank Salomon and others have argued that the Inca spatial organization of the landscape was fundamentally religious rather than administrative, with the road network physically enacting a sacred geography. The two functions, ritual and administrative, are not mutually exclusive, and most scholars accept both operated simultaneously. This theory is controversial, and deliberately so. Its proponents argue that the evidence demands an explanation outside the conventional framework. Critics counter that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and that the evidence presented, while suggestive, does not yet meet that standard. The debate continues in peer-reviewed literature. Perhaps the most unconventional theory suggests that the Middle labor system that built and maintained the roads was itself the empire's primary economic mechanism, with the roads as the physical output rather than the purpose, meaning the road system was fundamentally a technology of lab or extraction rather than transportation. This interpretation, explored in recent economic history of the Andes, does not diminish the road's logistical importance, but reframes who it primarily served and why. What is striking about this debate is not merely that experts disagree. That is normal and healthy in science. What is striking is the quality of the disagreement. Serious researchers, working from the same body of evidence, reaching genuinely different conclusions. That level of fundamental disagreement, when it persists over decades, is a signal that something important has not yet been understood. The question is not which of these theories is right. The question is whether any of them is right, or whether the truth is something that none of the current frameworks has yet been able to capture. The case surrounding the Inca Road, 40,000 kilometers of engineering without the wheel or iron, does not rest on speculation alone. What distinguishes this investigation from pure mythology is the existence of documented, physical, verifiable evidence, material that has been examined by credentialed researchers and whose authenticity is not seriously disputed. What is disputed is its interpretation. Let us review the most significant documented evidence as objectively as possible. We are not going to cherry-pick the data that supports a preferred conclusion. We are going to lay out what exists and let you draw your own assessment. Physical evidence supporting this account includes LiDAR and satellite remote sensing surveys have confirmed the 40,000 kilometer extent of the Q-Hapak Nyan and continue to identify previously unmapped sections in remote terrain. Ground truthing of LiDAR identified features has confirmed Inca Road construction in areas previously unrecorded in the archaeological literature, suggesting the network was even more extensive than the known documented sections indicated. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. Investigators have documented Spanish colonial records, particularly Cieza de Leon's Crónica del Perú, 1553, written within 20 years of the Spanish arrival, provide detailed eyewitness accounts of the road system when it was still largely functional. Cieza de Leon's description of road width, tampu spacing, bridge construction, and chasqui operation has been confirmed in every particular by subsequent archaeological investigation, establishing the colonial record as a reliable primary source for the road system's organization. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. On-site analysis revealed the annual reconstruction of the Huancaire suspension bridge across the Apurimac Canyon, carried out each June by 4 local communities using traditional grass cable techniques, demonstrates the engineering viability of the Inca bridge construction method and the survival of the knowledge to execute it. The bridge spans approximately 28 meters across the canyon at a height that would be challenging to engineer with conventional bridge-building approaches and has been reconstructed annually for centuries. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. Each individual piece of evidence might, in principle, be explained away. A single anomalous artifact might be misidentified. A single anomalous date might reflect contamination. A single anomalous eyewitness account might reflect misperception. The question is whether all of the evidence can be explained away, and whether the explanations required are more or less plausible than the evidence itself. When multiple independent lines of inquiry converge on the same conclusion, that convergence is the most powerful signal in empirical science. And that is exactly what we are seeing here. We have examined the history, the evidence, and the theories surrounding the Inca Road, 40,000 kilometers of engineering without the wheel or iron. Now we need to ask the question that is sometimes overlooked in discussions of ancient mysteries. Why does this matter? What does it mean for us today? It would be easy to file this away as an interesting historical curiosity, a puzzle from a distant past with no bearing on our present lives. That would be a fundamental mistake. The questions raised by this case touch on issues that are directly relevant to who we are, where we came from, and what the human story actually looks like before the period covered by conventional history. UNESCO 2014 inscription of the Q-Hapak Nyan as a World Heritage Site, was a landmark in international heritage recognition, involving 6 national governments in a joint nomination. Active archaeological survey using LiDAR continues to extend the known map of the network. The Quipu recording system, knotted string devices used by the Inca to record numerical and possibly narrative information, and distributed throughout the road network, remains only partially deciphered despite decades of study by Gary Urton and others. A full decipherment would transform understanding of how the road system was administered. Some Andean communities maintain traditional road sections for local use and ritual purposes. The highland sections of the road cross terrain, including passes above 4,000 meters that would challenge modern road engineering, making the Q-Hapaknian not merely a historical curiosity, but an ongoing demonstration of what pre-industrial engineering could achieve. Furthermore, the tools available to investigate these questions are advancing rapidly. Satellite imaging, ground-penetrating radar, ancient DNA analysis, isotopic tracing, and deep-sea sonar are all providing capabilities that previous generations of researchers could only dream of. Cases that were genuinely unresolvable 10 years ago are now open to new analysis, and the findings, consistently, are expanding rather than contracting the mystery. The investigation continues. New discoveries are being made. New analyses are being published. New voices are entering the conversation from disciplines that were not previously part of the discussion. The answers, when they come, and they will come, will not merely solve a historical puzzle. They will force a fundamental revision of assumptions that underpin our entire understanding of human history and human potential. We have now walked through the complete case of the Inca Road. 40,000 kilometers of engineering without the wheel or iron, from the historical record through the physical evidence across the competing theories and into the modern significance of what remains unresolved. What the story of Inca Road ultimately reveals is not just a historical puzzle. It is a mirror. It reflects our assumptions back at us, our assumptions about what ancient people were capable of, about how knowledge is gained and lost across the centuries, and about the relationship between what we know and what we merely think we know. The evidence presented in this documentary is real. The questions it raises are genuine. The debate among researchers is ongoing, and that is healthy. Science is not a set of conclusions. It is a process, and the process requires that we remain open to evidence that challenges what we thought we knew, however uncomfortable that challenge might be. If you came to this documentary as a skeptic, we hope the evidence gave you something to think about. If you came as a true believer, we hope the critical examination gave you a more nuanced picture. The truth, as always, lies in the evidence, not in what we want to be true. Thank you for watching. If this investigation sparked your curiosity, please subscribe to the channel. We publish new documentaries every week, covering the full range of historical mysteries that the mainstream has not yet adequately explained. Leave a comment below telling us which case you want us to investigate next. The conversation continues. The investigation never ends.